Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food? Injections? It's important the entire world learns of your experience.
That's enough.
The teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
For the seeker.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Driss.
Roger, nice to be in orbit.
What's up, guys? Broadcasting from the Forest Tower in the foggy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. It's about time, right? What did you guys think about that show last night? You might have to listen to it a few times. You can check out our website at lightingthevoid.com. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/lightingthevoid. And if you're a Twitter person, check us out on Twitter at lightingthevoid on Twitter. And get your free astrology basic works and principles books when you sign up to the newsletter on lightingthevoid.com. Put your name and number in there. Drive off into the sunset with it. That's all you got to do. It is September the 27th. The night is cooler than last night. And the first quarter moon is waxing in Sagittarius and on into Capricorn for all of you tropical astrologers out there. Tonight, Ryan Gable from the Secret Teachings radio show. Strap in. Get both of the hemispheres of your brain locked together. Focus through that pineal gland and shoot your magical laser beam out into the void. You might need those shockers to go along with it too. That might help. Rusty's laughing at me. Now this is a live show broadcasted on the Fringe.fm and can be heard on lightingthevoid.com, TalkStream Live, TalkStream Live's Paranormal app, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes Radio, Radio Guide FM, Radio Garden under Little Rock, Arkansas, all by proxy via the Fringe.fm. You can also check out the archives for free on any podcasting aggregator or app, such as Apple Podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player FM, and more. Tonight is really special to me because we're going to be talking about the secret teachings and symbolism. What are they really? Ryan Gable is joining us from the Secret Teachings radio show, a vet of internet radio. I can't wait for this. This guy has actually been kicked off some major networks because he refused to censor the information that he talked about.
Hell yeah.
That is highly respectable for us over here at Unlighting the Void and on the network. We love that.
Can't wait to hear him.
By the way, that voice you're hearing in the shack today with me is my man Rusty Pate. And Jeff Gilson happens to be out for the night, but he still gave us a report, which is fine with me. Everybody needs a break, right?
Yeah.
You guys know you can listen to the show on The Fringe or on Facebook. I said that last night and messed that up. If you go to Lighting the Void Facebook, there's a Listen Live link. You can also listen there. You can also listen to the show on our TalkStream Live number. I know I don't give that out enough. I don't know why I don't, but I should every single show, because some of you guys actually happen to run out of data sometimes, and it's not cool when you're listening to your show and all of a sudden you can't listen. So if you just call 7017-193971, you can actually listen to the show without, having to worry about data or anything. You can also email the show if you got some information or some news or some hate mail, whatever. If it's entertaining or it's cool, I mean, you can blast me. I don't care. If I think it's cool, I'm going to read it on the air. Same thing with a call-in number. When we do the show, 501-777-5631, you can call in and talk to us. But when I'm not here, you'll get a voicemail. I actually got a voicemail from a guy who was like, please don't play this on your radio show. I was trying to call a real estate agent, Thought about playing it, but I'll respect the guy. Right on?
Good stuff.
That is kind of funny, though, to me, that I did, I don't know. It was so funny when I heard it. I actually was like, I should play that, even though he asked me not to. I don't know. I want to be nice, though. But, yeah, use that number. Call in. Leave a voicemail. You don't have to call in. You can also come over on Spreaker if you want to join in the chat room. As I always say, I know a lot of our listeners listen via the network. They don't really get involved with the chat. But if you ever want to, the coolest people are in the chat room over here on Spreaker, and you can come join us. We got John, Catalina, Ramon, Heather, and people just keep filing in over here at night. And it's a really, in my opinion, a special group of people, because
it really is.
I could sit and talk to these people all night, and we'd love to hear from you. So come on over and join the chat.
Yeah, never any drama in the chat room either.
Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment in the chat room. Actually, we got some good sense of humors in the chat room. Did I say that right? Good senses of humors in the chat room. All right. Joe's magical tip of the night. This one's real simple, okay? I want you guys to try out what's called fasting. I know you've heard of it. But try like start out slow, a 24-day, no, that's a pretty heavy fast, 24-hour. No.
Oh, no.
Just 24-hour, maybe a 48-hour fast. It's wonderful, okay? It cleanses your body. It helps you with meditation. So let's say you go on a 3-day fast. And actually, if you read some mystics and magical material, they actually require you to do this. And what it does is it cleanses your body from focusing its energy on your digestive things that it needs to take care of, and focuses on everything. Say, for instance, like other things. For instance, like your brain and your focus. And meditate while you're fasting, just like they do in the East, right? You think you could do that, Rusty? It'd be hard. Try it out just one time for me. And then email the show at contact@lightingthevoid and tell me the experience you had with it. Now, this isn't like sleep deprivation, although I've known some people do that. It's different than sleep deprivation. And you can still drink water and even drink some juices and stuff, but do not shove food in your body for just a day or two, right?
Can you still drink Mountain Dew?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that is Joe's magical tip of the night.
What is the secret of your power?
All right, I'm really enjoying this new system we're on because it just relays the show. It's so freaking awesome. Famous birthdays for today. The lead singer of Third Eye Blind, his birthday. It doesn't say how old he is. I couldn't find that. Just today's his birthday. One of my favorite bands in the world. Couldn't find out how old the dude is.
Wow.
Right? You remember that band?
Yeah.
If you grew up in the 90s, that was a good band. And Meatloaf turned 70 today.
Meatloaf. Right on. 70. That dude's been kicking it.
Yeah, he's old.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
He's old, but he's cool, man. Meatloaf put out some cool music, but I always kind of chuckled every time I heard his song. I think it's because he named himself Meatloaf. Hey, what's up, Dave? Dave joined the chat. GG Rabbit, what's going on, guys? Glad to see you.
What's up?
Also, on this day in history, pretty interesting stuff, politically, I would say, on this day in history. In 1540, the Jesuit order was established. We all know we've talked about those kind of things. Actually, on this show, we haven't talked about the Jesuit order that much. And frankly, there's a good reason for that. In 1779, John Adams was appointed to negotiate peace terms with the British on this day in history in 1779. And if you're interested in stuff like that, there's actually a good documentary. I think it came out, I want to say it came out either on Starz or HBO that was called John Adams.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah,
that was
I did.
very interesting, actually. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's a documented historical documentary or anything like that, but to kind of understand how things were back then and get to the feel of that was a pretty good show. Check that out if you get time. And also, something else I thought was interesting on this day in history. In 1938, Franklin Roosevelt appealed to Hitler for peace on this day in history.
Damn.
I did not know that. I didn't even know that happened. I thought, we were just whooping ass and not really talking to him. But yeah, he did appeal for peace. So a little bit of diplomacy going on there. And yes, Jeff's not with us, but in spirit, I know he's listening, by the way. I don't know what he's doing. He's probably up to no good, but I know he's listening. So we're going to go on with the Gilson report. Now, do you guys remember a guy named Paul Horner? Okay, now I got this off Sheila Alien's, let's call Sheila Alien's Twitter desk, right? And you can follow her on Twitter at Sheila Alien. The writer of fake news, Paul Horner, was found dead. This guy supposedly wrote a bunch of fake news. Now, supposedly, you make your own judgment about this, okay? About the Trump and Hillary election. But they just found the guy dead a few days ago. He wrote a lot of massive stuff about that. It's hard to know what's fake and all that, though, back then, especially if you're looking into the media, Right. But you could pretty much say it was all fake. But this happened in Phoenix. So they say that he was a leading purveyor of fake news and the 2016 election, and he died just right outside the Phoenix area, and he was only 38 years old. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office spokesman Mark Casey said Tuesday authorities discovered Paul Horner dead in his bed on September the 18th. The medical examiner performed an autopsy which showed there were no signs of foul play. He said that he had a history of prescription drug abuse, which, that's neither here nor there. We don't know that, right? Evidence at the scene suggested this could be an accidental overdose. Isn't that the perfect thing that people... Now, I'm not saying the guy didn't die from that, because he might have, but if it's real easy to say that because your organs can shut down from taking pills just for you could be fine. We've had friends that's happened to.
Yeah.
You could be fine one day and the next day it just shuts off.
Yeah.
True stuff. Also, though, it would be the perfect cover-up. I know that people have been killed by the CIA. I don't know how they do it, but I know they got secret ways of doing it.
Oh, man.
But why would they kill this guy? Anyways, they included a story falsely claiming former President Obama that he was gay and a radical Muslim, and another one that saying protesters were being paid thousands of dollars to demonstrate at Donald Trump's campaign rallies. You remember that?
I do remember that.
So Horner took on greater prominence during the presidential election, while false stories were widely shared on social media during the race between Trump and Hillary Clinton. An interview with the Washington Post in 2016, Horner said he thought Trump won the White House because of him. So he was taking credit for Trump's win because of all of the crap that he was putting out on the internet.
Yeah, this dude's a professional shit talker.
Yeah, but Horner said Trump supporters did in fact check his stories before posting them. Of course they did. Right? But it's just weird. Now the dude's dead,
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying there's a government cover-up here or anything like that, but he's pretty young to be dying like that. And I looked at some pictures of him and stuff. He looked to seem like he was in pretty good health. Yeah. But, most people that are popping high-dollar prescription drugs, they seem to be okay most of the time.
But he did have that look like he could handle his shit.
Yeah, he did.
And just to pop off dead at 38, you do have to question.
Right. All right, moving on. I just found that kind of interesting. I posted this video in the Facebook page on Lighting the Void because I want to show you how people, they get so attached, and I want to talk to Ryan about this, how people become so codependent, right? They do crazy things when they lose their codependent partner, okay? I had a cousin of mine who was young who fell in love and killed himself. He took his dad's gun, went out in the woods, and killed himself, and he was 14 years old.
Damn.
See, that's a problem. when we're not talking to these people? Well, see, we're not talking to our kids enough. We're not letting them know that you shouldn't intimately depend on other people for happiness. If you do, then it becomes a problem. And speaking of which, I posted this video, Suicide by Snake. This guy killed himself with a black mamba.
Damn.
Because he was lovesick. He live streamed his own antagonizing suicide after letting a deadly black mamba bite his hand.
That dude was, man.
He's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Right?
Man, that guy was...
But see, it's easy to judge because we're like, man, he's just crazy. But when you get an emotional stress, there's no telling what you'll do.
In my head, I was just sitting there mentally picturing this man surrounded by demons, whispering, screaming in his ear. Would you something like that just because you're mentally sick?
A heartbroken snake expert filmed himself dying on a live stream broadcast after he let his black mamba bite his hand.
A black mamba,
yeah. He let a black mamba bite his hand in the wake of his breakup, his marital breakup. Arslan Valiyev, he was only 31 years old, from St. Petersburg, Russia, pleaded with viewers to call his ex-wife, Katerina, or Katya, I'm not going to say her last name because honestly I can't pronounce it, as he visibly deteriorated on camera. So as he was dying, he was pleading to the sick people that were watching this film, call my ex. Reason with her.
Not one asshole called 911.
I don't know. We'll find out here. Now, he filmed this on a live stream in the wake of his breakup and his marriage. Valiyev, who had reportedly split with his wife after beating her,
oh man,
initially went off camera and muffled "ouch." You can hear him say "ouch," which can be heard as the deadly snake bite. The actual snake bite and moment of death are actually not shown. But the blogger, a former zoo employee, allowed viewers to see the bite on his hand. At the end of the footage, he got up from his chair and staggered off camera. Looks like he was kind of actually headed towards the bathroom, and he died soon afterwards.
Damn.
Now, in the live stream, he actually says, "If I die, then I die. I just will stay with you for some time. Just in case, on my mobile, there is a message from Katya." Now, his breathing actually starts speeding up, and his eyes start rolling before his muscles appear to become numb. And he quotes, "Pass it on to Katya that I loved her very much," he said, showing his bitten finger with blood on it. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Oh, damn, how it bye to everyone. I can't believe this is happening to me." He then read out his former wife's mobile number. He gave that out before adding, "I'm already dying. Farewell. I would be glad to see, I would love to see," I think his English is kind of messed up. He says, "I would be glad to see Katya." And then he says, "I'm shaking." And then he and Katya were famous for running YouTube channels. It's called Bobcat TV, about felines, and Exoterium, which is about snakes. And they had hundreds of thousands of followers. So friends said on August 4th, he had accused her of cheating on him. Now, Valiyev beat her, and she suffered a concussion from that. That's what it was reported. But he later repented on September the 21st, where he publicly apologized to her for his behavior, saying that their sexual relationship had ended in July. Now, his death came hours after a snake lover who died close to his pet python was suffocated to death. It says Valiyev's death came hours after a snake lover who died close to his pet python was suffocated to death. So he was dealing with that tragedy, too.
Huh.
Right, so cops initially confirmed Dan Brandon's body had suffered serious injuries. I guess that's his real name. Black mambas are known for their highly aggressive nature. We all seen Kill Bill, right?
Yeah.
How she explained it. It was totally accurate, and it is the world's deadliest snake. They can get up to 14 foot long, and they weigh like less than 4 pounds. That's just scary. I looked at a picture of one of those things. They're freaky looking.
Yeah,
man.
I know. And
now, they will repeatedly strike if they feel threatened, but black mambas are found slithering through the rocky hills of southern and eastern Africa. Snake bite victims usually die in 20 minutes.
Have you ever seen videos of them? They're like freaky fast.
Well, my point is with this is, tonight I want to talk about symbolism, perception, the secret teachings, and stuff like that, but we've got to take responsibility for our emotions. We cannot, when you depend on some other person to fulfill your happiness, you can become literally insane.
Yeah.
no one's saying this is a bad dude. No one's saying he's crazy. I mean, beating on his girl, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, really.
But we don't know the whole story on that either, okay? But what I'm saying is find your own happiness within yourself. Live a life of solitude just for a little while, just until you become happy with who you are all alone. And you will find true happiness. There's no way like this. If this guy would have done that, I don't believe he would have ever went down this road. He'd have been like, so long, farewell. I know I'm okay by myself. I know I can live by myself in happiness. I don't need to go out and get a black mamba to kill me on film because I need the attention so bad because I'm suffering emotionally.
Yeah, you notice how when he said we ended our sexual relationship, he didn't say our relationship. It's almost like this dude is sex crazed. And he's going to miss the sex more than the relationship.
It does sound weird.
Does it not?
Yeah, it does. There's a little weirdness to it. All right, here's a funny story, though. Police, an armed robber dressed as a Coke bottle, police reported. On September 26th, I put this video on the Facebook page at Lighting the Void, too. On September the 26th, a gunman dressed as a Coca-Cola bottle robbed a Kentucky restaurant. Investigators say the suspect stuck up a Rally's restaurant in Henderson just before 7 a.m. Monday. The robber, armed with a handgun, stole over $500 from the closed eatery, which was only staffed by one manager, who didn't get injured, by the way, so that's good. But the Henderson Police Department described the robber as a white male who fled the crime scene in a gray minivan wearing a Coke suit, driven by another white male. The gunman's Coca-Cola outfit may have been some kind of Halloween costume, said police spokesperson, who added that the investigators are attempting to access surveillance footage that they may have recorded on the suspect. Now, I've got some of that footage, actually, there. on there. So, anyways.
Yeah,
weird news, right?
Yeah.
I figured I would talk something different than Nibiru and, the end of the world and all that other stuff because, good grief, they're still not letting that go yet.
Yeah.
No, seriously, if you get on there, on a lot of shows, they're still talking about it.
Dang it.
It's over.
Yeah.
There's stuff rolling around in our solar system, but it's over. Okay. I don't know what to think about all that. All right. When we come back, we're going to have an interesting conversation. Ryan Gable from the Secret Teachings radio show. Understanding occult symbolism, the true meanings, and the secret teachings. I'm Joe Roof. This is Lighting Void. Stick around. Be right back.
Pull back the blinds and uncover the truth. This is Lighting the Void Radio.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We rock the paranormal talk.
Hey guys, Joe Roop here, and I wanted to tell you about Gaia. Gaia empowers the evolution of consciousness. Now you can stream yoga, meditation, and mind-expanding programs that provide a true alternative to mainstream media, all to your PC or mobile device. Gaia also works on Apple TV, Roku, or Chromecast. Check out the My Yoga section where you can foster mindfulness in your practice with the latest expert-led yoga and meditation instruction at any level. Or visit the Spiritual Growth section and awaken your spirit with exclusive tools to help with mind development, spirituality, and self-improvement. My favorite section, obviously, is the truth-seeking section. Explore who we are and why we are here with specialists in metaphysics, ancient wisdom, the paranormal, and more. Also, the Health and Longevity series teaches how to nourish yourself with the insights and information from the forefront of alternative medicine, holistic healing, and longevity practices. Last but not least, hard-to-find films and series. Get inspired by hard-to-find independent films, moving shorts, nature and cultural documentaries, and feel-good films. You can watch on any PC or mobile device. Get your first month for only 99 cents and support LTV Radio by going to lightingthevoid.com/Gaia. That's GAIA. Again, lightingthevoid.com/Gaia.
Greetings, I'm Space Boy. I started writing music at an early age, inspired by such synth stylings of the Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, Kraftwerk, Art of Noise, and 8-Bit. I have crafted my work into a hybrid of synth pop with modern electronica rock music of today, with pounding beats, high-energy arpeggios, soothing orchestral movements, and rock and roll! Space Boy will surely be a part of anyone's music collection. So head on over to spaceboymusic.com and get you some cool stuff.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio with Joseph Roop. Stay up to date right now, lightingthevoid.com.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
All right, welcome back. This is Lighting the Void. I'm Joe Roop. Next week on the program, a week of astral travel and out-of-body experience talk. Tuesday, we're going to have Todd Akamesis on. And Wednesday night, Tom Campbell, author of My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. That's going to be epic. So you better bring yourself for that. It's going to be an awesome week. All right, let's bring on our guest. Ryan Gable is a veteran radio personality and producer for his show, The Secret Teachings. He presents his own research and unique analysis on each an in-depth episode while welcoming guests from around the world. The Secret Teachings, hosted by veteran radio host Ryan Gable, researcher and writer, named after the philosopher Manly P. Hall's great work, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, which we've talked about on this program. He presents his own research and welcomes guests from all over, including authors, investigators, activists, and whistleblowers. The show focuses on the synchronicity of alternative news, health, including GMO and organic, alternative and ancient history, the paranormal, astrotheology, religion and astronomy, transhumanism, alchemy, artificial intelligence, science, the occult, magic, politics, symbolism, philosophy, the esoteric, and the secret doctrine. Pretty cool stuff. I love pretty much everything about this. No subject is off limits, and because of this, Ryan has also been removed from 2 separate networks, including the Art Bell Keith Rowland Dark Matter Network and WPRK 91.5 FM for a refusal to censor content that he was speaking about relating to various subjects. Now, he is also the author of a few books, actually: The Grand Illusion, Slaves to Perception, False Prophets and Lovers of Children, The Persistent Illusion, The Technological Elixir, and Food Philosophy. Ryan's show and books also, they focus on the synchronicity of alternative news, health and history, philosophy, the paranormal, symbolism, the occult, esoteric, alchemy, magic, politics, and all that's also in his books. All right? And it's very distinct. And this guy I've been listening to his show. I can't wait to get this conversation going. But you can find his website at thesecretteachings.info, thesecretteachings.info, or you can email him at rdgable@yahoo.com. And Ryan, man, it's awesome to have you on the show, man. How are you doing?
Hey there, Joseph and Rusty. I'm really happy to be here on the program. I'm very excited that you sent me a message and you were willing to have me on. I'm excited to get into the subject matter tonight. There's a lot of topics.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it too, brother.
Well, I was talking to Dave Cruz. We're big fans of Clyde Lewis. We listened to him. I said, man, I would like to talk to somebody that kind of understands these things I'm talking about. And he was like, "Oh, dude, you got to, check out Ryan Gable." And I was like, "Okay." So I went over. As soon as I heard the first show where you were talking about the symbolisms and how you would go out in public and wear them, and it was fascinating, the reactions you would get, I was like, "Oh yeah, dude, this guy's great. He knows exactly what we're trying to do here." So yeah, it's awesome to have you here.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero, he's a friend of mine. I've been on his program many, many times. He's one of the few people that I've ever met in radio who sort of just, I say, get it. They get it. They just kind of understand the deeper level that goes beyond the political veil, that goes, I guess, beyond and far deeper, or you might say higher, than the polarizations that we have within all society, for that matter. What I mean by that is, typically when you have a conversation with somebody, and I mean this as generally as possible, it could be about any topic, there are certain fallacies that people tend to use in conversation, and I'm not even necessarily talking about political correctness, where, and I sometimes also call this the musket argument, where they're sort of built to fire one time. A question that is proposed to you, such as, "Ryan, do you believe in climate change?" And I can answer that question in a variety of ways, such as, yes, I do believe in climate change because the climate changes. The climate is changing from summer to fall right now where I live.
Right.
Do I believe that we should pay $4 trillion to the World Bank? Not necessarily. So to go a little bit deeper is my goal in every single one of those topics you mentioned and more.
Hell yeah.
How did you get... How old were you when you first started getting started in all this? When you really started, waking up going, man, there's something here, and then digging into it, and then started reporting it. When did all that start for you?
Well, minus the reporting, I went to film school when I was right out of high school, so 18 years old, 19. And when I was in film school, I met this girl who I became friends with, and she introduced me to a guy named Dimitri. And we were in a documentary class. We were going to do a documentary film on something interesting. We wanted to do something very unique compared with all the other kids. So we decided to do social engineering. I think we also talked a little bit about 9/11, but very little. And we also talked about the Federal Reserve. So we went to the radio station, and I was interested in these subjects. I didn't really know much about them. I had read some books by David Icke and my friend, the late Jim Mars. And I really didn't have a good basis of what I believed or what I understood. So I go to the radio station. I became friends with this guy named Dimitri after we did the documentary. He invited me on to do his show as a co-host. It was at 6 o'clock in the morning for 2 hours on Sundays. So I started to get up. I would do the show. And eventually what happened was he ended up having to do some work-related items outside of radio. So as he did that, I progressed more into radio, kind of found my voice and found what interested me the most. And that was primarily Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Right on.
And so I know you like that book too. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. It is, I've said also, as you said to me, it is like a Bible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I started this journey, that was the book I picked up, and it seems like for anybody that's interested in the secret teachings and to understand symbolism and what's really going on behind closed doors and the mind and all this stuff, is if you start with that book, it's like the seed to branch you out to everything, and you can always go back to it and reread it. And I do to this day and still find stuff that I missed,
It absolutely is. I've read the book 3 times, and it's a massive, massive compilation of material. Manly Hall actually wrote that when he was 20, well, probably when he was 22, 23, but it was published when he was 24, so he was very young. And likewise, I was very young when I got into radio after I started to find my voice and learn how to do research, because I was never taught that in school, not taught how to think critically or to reason or to use logic. I was taught to have those musket arguments, to respond and regurgitate programmed information based on a set of preconceived conclusions, one left, one right, one black, one white. And so when I found the middle ground, that's something I also recognized in terms of symbolism within Manly P. Hall's work and in the reading of other similar philosophies, that the middle ground, the point of equilibrium, the balance where the Buddha walks the middle path and where Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and also the light, the light of the world, the Redeemer, the Savior. Light, truth is a Savior. And you can see that symbolism of the equilibrium between two pillars in the High Priestess Tarot card, which is invariably demonstrated by symbolic performance at nearly every single Super Bowl. And I've shown this in my books, The Grand Illusion, The Persistent Illusion, and The Technological Elixir. And just as a brief example of that, when you had Beyonce singing at the Super Bowl, I think that was at this year's Super Bowl, about a year ago, where the camera angle opens, she's standing there and she has this gold cross on her chest, an X, which is a cross turned sideways. Mm-hmm. And behind her are, you remember that? And she has
I do remember that, brother.
So they produce, and this is more Kabbalistic symbolism, mystic Jewish symbolism. They produce this to the public. I don't necessarily think that it's good or bad, but being aware of it makes you quite aware that there's also something more that is being demonstrated. It's not just a group of entertainers that get together and are paid a bunch of money to perform at the halftime show. It goes deeper.
Yeah, that's something I did want to talk to you about, because I remember when Katy Perry got up there and she had the checkerboard floor and all the, the astrological occult symbols and everything. Yeah. Everybody's like, look, she's a devil worshiper. And I was like, I don't know what to say to this, because I know what these symbols mean, right? But how am I to explain to the public why Katy Perry is doing this? You understand what I'm saying? I couldn't explain it.
I've struggled with that over the years, and at some point I recognized, actually I interviewed Dr. Judy Wood, who wrote the book, Where Did the Towers Go? And she made a very, very good point about how when you are provided with evidence of something, you don't necessarily have to provide a reason why somebody would have carried out some horrific act. You can just use the evidence to prove that it was done. And I think that point of view was, at least for me, very profound and very powerful in helping me to understand that when you have a look at these types of things, there is no doubt that when you look at Katy Perry, Amanda Bynes, Britney Spears, Kanye West, you look at Miley Cyrus, you start to see a trend. You see the shortened blonde hair. You see the shaved heads. Kanye West, remember, he has a little political rant, goes to a center and then comes out with dyed blonde hair. Eminem, blonde hair. His alternate ego is Slim Shady. Miley Cyrus plays Hannah Montana, an alternate personality. You start to see these trends. I don't necessarily have proof of what it means. I have some ideas. But in a symbolic sense, at least I can demonstrate through photographs and even sometimes through lyrics in the entertainment industry and music that there's obviously a reason that these people are doing what they're doing. And I believe personally that it has to do with their belief that grants them in a magical way, and we could describe what magic is because there's a lot of different definitions, but that grants them in a magical way the power to maintain their wealth and to maintain their fame and to maintain their career.
Yeah, that's you just explained it. I wish I could have explained it then when it happened, when I see this stuff. And, cinema symbolism, too. That's a big subject. And I don't know if there's magicians behind the scenes doing this stuff, and I know you talk about this quite a bit, or if it's merely the subconscious expressing itself through art. Do you have an idea of what's going on there? Because it's definitely all in our movies.
Precisely. I think that it's both and more. It is, and that was an elegant way to explain it too. It's a subconscious form of, it's just like a subconscious form of realization of symbolism that comes to the forefront that's produced through art. So when you have a look at magic, a lot of people with that musket argument, again, they're built to fire once, where magic, you either believe it or you don't. And magic could be, to some people, a card game, a popular card game, or magic could be the magic of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Or magic could also be some delusional state of mind where people think that waving a magic wand gives them power. And who's to say that it doesn't? Because magic is simply symbolic action that is carried out through intention that is meant to play upon the imagination in various degrees of intensity. So when you go to a magic show, traditional stage magic, and you see a magician waving a wand, let's say, and that magician is directing your attention to the wand, it's a tool, it's a symbol, and it only has power if you suspend your sense of disbelief, you give it power, and then you allow the magician to perform the illusion, and you think, well, how did he do that? How did she do that? So you've given it power. That's magic. That's the illusion. But does the actual magic wand have any power unless the magician, to himself or to herself, or the audience, grants that tool power? So in that regard, when you look at the celebrities that perform like Madonna and Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus and Britney Spears and Eminem, and not maybe as much Eminem, but some of the pop stars, Katy Perry, when they perform things that, for lack of a better word and without the stigma, might be defined as some sort of bizarre ritual, I believe that they're doing it again for this reason, because to them it has power, and to them it grants power. Also, I think it's very important to recognize that, and I don't really listen to pop music.
Yeah.
But if you have a look at music videos, I mean, I don't know, do you watch music videos for this reason, to look for symbols?
Not really. I'm just by glancing, I'll catch them, and I've caught a few, like in football games and stuff like that. But no, I mean, I stopped watching MTV when they stopped being MTV.
Yeah. Well, when you look at some of these music videos, I mean, if you have a celebrity, a pop star, and they produce an album a year, I would suggest that probably 90% of what they do is mundane and, for the most part, useless in terms of understanding that there's a deeper, or using to study and to determine that there's a deeper causation for what they do. There's only a small percent of what they do that happens to be identical to the 10% of what other celebrities do. So when you start to see, again, Eminem with the alternate ego, blonde hair, shaved head, Katy Perry, blonde hair, shaved head, Kanye West, very short hair, dyed it blonde after his meltdown, comes out as another person out of rehab. You have the same thing with Amanda Bynes. She dyed her hair, or she had blonde hair, shaved it, and then she was wearing a blue wig to a court hearing, and she started talking about how she had a microchip in her head, and then how her dad had actually allowed them to put the microchip in her head. And then you had Miley Cyrus with the same thing. She plays this alternate ego, Hannah Montana, and her dad, Billy Ray Cyrus, actually spoke about how there are handlers who handle her affairs, and I don't mean just agents. He said handlers that dictate what she does, and they're only concerned with her wealth, and they are basically destroying her sense of being. So you start to put this together, and they're not isolated cases, and that small percent, which might be less than 10%, I was just using that as an example, and there's obviously another reason that these types of strange, to some people, bizarre to other people, rituals are performed in music videos and at the halftime of a Super Bowl, which, how many people are watching the Super Bowl?
Everybody.
Millions.
Yeah. Everybody.
Millions. So you direct all of that attention on the magician waving the wand. People don't even know that it's a wand per se, in a symbolic sense. You're granting it power, and therefore that ritual actually has power. It's not just some halftime show sponsored by Pepsi.
So, real quick, this is great to start with the beginning of the show, actually, because we were talking about this last night, and I was trying to get, Richard Allen Miller to explain this, but you're doing it in a way that I think all of us can understand, that symbolism is being used as a program. So when we view it with our eyes or we take it in via our senses, if it's a symbol that, let's say, that's been around since, I don't know, the 1600s, it's buried in the super unconscious, then it does have some kind of power, especially if millions of people are looking at it and saying, that means that, right? Well, then it definitely has power, at least on a mundane level.
That's absolutely right. I mean, because when you look at just something simple like your name, my name is Ryan, R-Y-A-N. You take those letters, what are those letters? Those letters are symbols. And those symbols have a specific vibration, just as numbers have a specific vibration. And I think a really great example of, and a very simple example to make it very easy to understand, is if you take the number 6, the number 6 is a symbol, also a number, of course, but if you turn it upside down, you have a 9. And if you take an 8 and turn it on its side, you have the infinity symbol. If you take a 7 and turn it upside down, you have L. If you take a 6 or a 9, you can turn it into an E. The different ways in which symbols, whether they are numbers or letters, are written, whether they are distorted from their original meaning, which also gives them a new meaning, both symbolically and through vibration. This can play literally and figuratively on the subconscious, and I think on the basis and the fabric of our reality, because even mainstream physics will tell you that the basis of our reality is vibration. And I think that was really the premise, that was the basis of the Pythagorean school of the Greeks in specific, or in particular rather, that their specific way of thinking was that the world was vibration. And so you had the symbolism of music and harmony and vibration, and that's the basis of numbers and letters. They are symbols. Mm-hmm. You heard of the Dr. Masaru Emoto in Japan? You guys heard of him?
I've heard the name. I've heard the name, but I'm not familiar. Go ahead, let us know.
Yeah, his work was controversial, but I think that there was some element of truth to it. He basically took samples of water.
That's right. And the freezing in water okay, go ahead. He's the one that changed water based on what he was telling the water what to do, right? It's like cursing one cup and then blessing another one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. He would say, "I love you" or "I hate you." And the water that was told, "I love you," it froze into beautiful geometric shapes, basically like snowflakes as we'd see them. And the water that he said, "I hate you," or, he had his team working on "I hate you," they froze into these blobs that really didn't have a structure or a shape. Now, let's just say that symbolically that's true. That relates directly to the understanding that numbers and letters are both symbols, and we are directed, or sometimes indirected, if you will, directly or indirectly, we are programmed to respond to these symbols, to these words. And often, maybe they're not symbols in the traditional sense. Maybe these symbols are colors. Maybe they are corporate logos. When we look at Starbucks, I'm sure most people are familiar with Starbucks. Starbucks is a 5-pointed star, which is the star of Venus or Lucifer. Mm. And under that is the crown, the goddess crown, and underneath of that is the goddess. But the goddess is also a naiad or a nymph, a water spirit. And if you actually go and look at the original symbol of Starbucks, you can go online and just type it in. You back out from that circle, and this character has 2 legs like a mermaid with her legs open, and she's known as I think they call her a siren in Greece, but she's known as Melusine, the water goddess. And that's right there on the Starbucks logo. And how many millions of people buy that coffee every single day and look at that symbol and don't know the power that it has. And I think that this is a large part of the reason why these companies hire people that have some type of scholarly background in symbolism.
Dude, I've always thought that, Ryan. I swear, what you're saying right now, I've always thought that these people that made this stuff were either super smart and knew their occult work, or they were like some dude in a dark tower somewhere, with runes tattooed all over him going, "I'm going to rule the world," or something, because they know the power of these symbols, how they trigger things in our mind and body.
That is absolutely right. Very, very articulate. That's exactly how I feel too. And I've had to study and learn so I can sort of prove that intuition. But we also see, not just with like Starbucks, but look at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, not the words, not the colors, but the font, the text itself. I've actually seen these are like psychological tests to determine how the brain works. I've seen the text of Coca-Cola used in writing other words, and immediately when you see it with the red background, your brain reads Coca-Cola, even though it doesn't say Coca-Cola. So those corporate symbols or the corporate logos are just as powerful as a swastika or a hammer and sickle. They're just as powerful as the number 666 or the number 999. They're just as powerful as the color red or the color blue. They're just as powerful as the symbol of a snake or a black mamba. It's a matter of how you interpret it, and people can interpret it in various ways. And guess what? A 6 is a 6, but a 6 is also a 9. And if you turn that 6 upside down, you get a 9, and then maybe you stand on your head, the 9 turns back into a 6. It's a 6 and a 9 at the same time. So people that view it as a 6 are right, and the people that view it as a 9 from a different perspective, upside down, are also correct.
And that is also funny. It's an astrological symbol too, and it kind of works that way. In astrology, it works that way as well. I mean, if you look at the, I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's not concourses, but it's a word that means symbols that mean other things. I'll think of the word in a minute, but yeah. Mountain Dew. I'm looking at a Mountain Dew can. You know, like this stuff is all over, man. You know, if you look at Mountain Dew, it shows the dew and the dew of the morning. And, you know, when you really study the what the dew means, they talk about it in ancient scriptures all the time, you know. So I think that it's all over the place. But in your opinion, do you think these are just, like you were trying to say earlier before I cut you off, that these were just smart people that knew the effects of it? Or are they magicians? Or maybe they don't know they're magicians?
I think all the above. I think most of them just understand the power of those symbols in the same way that a lot of companies don't really have to advertise that much because their products are very well known, and that company's name will sell the product without you even knowing what the product is in some cases. So when you look at it from that point of view, we can understand, at least I think, we can understand that some of these symbols are so powerful that they can affect us on a level where we just accept them and we don't really think anything else about it. Other symbols can provoke, almost as an intimidating factor, can provoke anger, can provoke fear, or they can provoke happiness. And of course, the ones that provoke happiness, and maybe even a little bit of power and perhaps a little bit of the insinuation of dominance, and fear is, of course, a subcategory of that to a degree, I would suggest. They were to use those symbols in banks in particular to demonstrate the dominance, to demonstrate the power of the bank. So when I was living in Orlando, Florida, I'm from Florida, and I lived in Orlando, Florida, and I started driving into the city. I would drive to Tampa, where I'm from, go to a hockey game on the weekend, and I drive back to Orlando. And when I was driving back into the city, I started recognizing the entire city, every building is a bank. And I started to realize that all these banks are named very, very similarly. Not like Chase Bank or Wells Fargo, but you look at SunTrust, and the SunTrust Bank was built with obelisks and pyramids, where obelisks are little tiny pyramids on the top of the pillars.
Right.
And those obelisks, those are symbols of the sun. To me, that's not a coincidence. When you look at other banks that are also built in a phallic shape, that could be for that reason, or it could be for what you suggested. And that's because subconsciously it's coming out in art. It's coming out in architecture, the symbolism of the phallus or the yoni or the yonic symbol, which is the female reproductive organ, which is represented in domes, the dome shape, which is also right there next to the SunTrust building in Orlando. So right next to each other, you have a big dome, the female, and above it, you have these big phallic symbols. And it's actually the same thing at the Florida Capitol. The Florida Capitol building where the governor stays, where his office is, it's a long phallic object, 2 domes on the side as testicles, and right across the street is the Florida Supreme Court, which is this big dome building. So you have the phallus, and then you have the female reproductive organs again. To me, that's not a coincidence. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody put it there, but when we're aware of it, we recognize that there's a lot more to our reality than just some architect decided, hey, let's build a building this way because it looks good. They're choosing this for a reason, at the very least, at least the names and the symbols, because they know, the people that are in charge know that these symbols have power. And in order to utilize that power, which is a form of magic, they hire somebody to design something that will attract attention in that way.
Well, you know, they say that Starbucks is the number one business in America that people say they're going to boycott and then return to.
Really?
Yeah.
And you know,
so many people say they're never to give them another dollar. We're not even going to buy their drinks at a gas station.
It's happened a bunch.
And then they return right back to it. It's the number one. Yes, the number one statistic
And
wise.
it's funny too, because as you were describing the symbol of Starbucks coffee in detail. Heather put in the chat room, she's like, "Now I want coffee." You see, so it works.
Well,
it does work that way.
What is that character? As you just alluded to, Rusty, people come back to it even after they say they're going to leave. Well, what is Melusine? She's the siren. The siren sounds, and you have to cover your ears, or you'll be led to that island, and you'll never get off of it. It's strewn with the bones of sailors and travelers in Greek mythology. She is the siren that continues to draw people into her into her trance.
Powerful stuff there.
Yeah, that's cool.
People don't really understand. I mean, we talk about this a lot. People don't understand the power of symbolism. They're afraid of it. You know, as soon as some people see symbolism, especially like what we were talking about earlier with videos and stuff, they're like, "Oh, that's the Illuminati," you know, or they're trying to take over the world, or this. There may be some type of truth to that, but when you give people this power, they get that power. You know, when you tell them, you're validating everything you're saying in a way that's not good for you or me. You know,
that's right, and that leads to paranoia. And just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they won't get you, but that leads to a delusional form of paranoia, and you go to the opposite extreme. Again, those two pillars of opposing or apparent contradiction. Those two pillars of the High Priestess tarot card are Boaz and Jachin, the two pillars of Solomon's temple, as I'm sure you know. And they are also the two thieves that Jesus is crucified next to on the cross, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, or the light. He's in the middle path of the Buddha, the two thieves crucified on either side. And so that extremist view is either, to use the word Illuminati as a concept, that is either the Illuminati doesn't exist, it's all in your imagination, you watch too many movies, you watch that Nicolas Cage movie, National Treasure, you're delusional, or the other side of it that looks at every single triangle and thinks that because somebody is taking a geometry test that they're in the Illuminati. There's a very balanced middle ground that can be reached where we can acknowledge that absolutely the Illuminati existed as a secret society. They were founded in 1776 on May 1st, May Day, right after the Walpurgis Festival on April 30th through the 31st to May 1st. And that celebration is still held today. There are a lot of significant dates around that time, from mid-April to the end of April to May 1st. So there's a significant reason why Adam Weishaupt, the law professor from Bavaria, chose that day to found the Illuminati. Now, the interesting thing is their tenets, the tenets of the Illuminati, which have sort of been exaggerated upon. They are very similar to the planks of communism, and those planks of communism, I actually just wrote a 20-plus page essay on this. Those planks of communism are nearly identical, or rather we could reverse this, to the 17 points or the 17 goals of the United Nations in order to achieve what they call, quote, unquote, sustainability by the year 2030. They call this Agenda 2030 as opposed to Agenda 21 of the 21st century. And those 17 goals exactly outline in more detail and in larger numbers in terms of the plans that are laid out. We can say plans, perhaps. They are almost identical, in some cases almost very close to being word for word to the planks of communism. And then, of course, you trace that back to the tenets of the Illuminati, or at least what they were supposed to represent. And you do have, I talked with Clyde Lewis on Ground Zero about this, you do have an Illuminati, but the Illuminati is more of a symbol. It's more of a concept. You have more of the Illuminati in the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and the Bank for International Settlements than you do in the actual Illuminati, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. It makes total sense. Yeah, so we're coming up on the interlude here, but I wanted to talk about, when we come back, some of the negative symbols that we connotate negative things to, like the swastika, or like you said, the hammer and sickle. A little bit more about symbolism, and we'll talk a little bit more about the, the semantics of magic and try to get you a clear understanding with that. I don't think that we could have picked a better person to talk to about this. So yeah, this is going to get pretty interesting. When we come back, don't go anywhere. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void. Stay tuned.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting, thefringe.fm, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to
you. You're riding into the Paranormal.
Live Saturday nights at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on KTLK, The Fringe.
Do you find yourself bored and longing to learn more about the mysteries and conspiracies behind our reality? Specifically, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific? What a coincidence, because that's exactly when me, Gigi, and my lovely co-host Cortana kicked over the airwaves with just the right amount of intellectual stimulation to give you that eargasm of conversational excellence that you deserve. So be sure to check out our show, Shift Habits, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central. And let's shake some talk radio tail feather, shall we? Right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hey Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
We're still getting strange on Sundays. Hey everyone, it's me, Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, letting you know we're on live Sunday nights right here on the Fringe FM. The Strange Sunday saga continues live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Listen on thefringe.fm or at beyondthestrange.com. Again, that's Sunday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific. See you there.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much
KTLK Digital Broadcasting, thefriends.fm, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey, it is I, Kurt Green from the Kurt Green Hour. Come hang out with me every Wednesday night at midnight, Pacific Standard Time. As we unwind, hey, grab a cup of coffee, hang out with me, enjoy the ride. That's midnight every Wednesday night, right here on thefringe.fm. To call the show, pick up the phone and dial 501-777-5631. That's 501-777-5631.
Around. This is Lighting the Void. I'm Joe Roop. In the shack with me today is Rusty Pate. Don't forget next week, a week of out-of-the-body experiences with Todd Akamesis Tuesday night and Tom Campbell Wednesday night, author of My Big Toe, Theory of Everything. Personally worked with Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute. That's going to be really cool. And also tonight, I'm going to be on this microphone for probably the next 5 hours. I'll be on Spaced Out Radio next. And then after that, we're also going to do the Kurt Green Hour. And tonight, though, we are speaking with Ryan Gable from the Secret Teachings radio show, and we are talking about the secret teachings, ancient magic, symbolism, and becoming more aware of these things so we can make better judgments and things of that nature. And we were talking about some of the symbols that corporations are using, either aware or unawares. But I wanted to ask you, Ryan, about, because I'd listened to your show, and you were speaking about things that get a little bit more of a negative attention, like, let's say, the swastika or the hammer and sickle. The swastika is actually an old Indian symbol, isn't it?
It is indeed an old Indian symbol, but it's not just in India. It's also in China. It's also actually the word swastika comes in a couple different forms, including savastika, which is the reverse of the swastika as we know it, and it represents the feminine principle as opposed to the male principle. So there's various ways to view the swastika.
Right, but when we see it, we think, Nazis. That's just the first thing that pops in our head. And that's kind of, in my opinion, a very sour thing, because they took such a beautiful symbol and used it, and now, to me, it's like when everybody sees it, they won't give it the power that it once used to have in the right way,
Yeah, it's stained.
Yeah.
Right, so when we have a look at the corporate logos, the corporate symbols, as you mentioned, coming back from break, we were talking about sun symbolism, and if you have a look at some of the corporate logos or company logos, and also just the name or the word sun, you can find it in everything from Folgers coffee, the rising sun behind the mountains. You have the same symbol for the Days Inn Hotel, SunTrust Bank. You have the peacock for NBC, which is not just a sun, but the peacock can represent a sun as a sun symbol. Shell gas, which is both solar in nature, but the shell is a symbol of Venus, the goddess, the morning star, Lucifer, which is the five-pointed star above the head of Melusine on the Starbucks logo. You have the BP logo, and people might say, well, that's not a sun. Well, it's depicted as a sun, and so is Frito-Lay, a little gold sun behind the red band. Walmart has the yellow star or the sun. Sunoco gas. Remember Gulf gas, another big orange ball of the sun. But to give you a better example, have a look at HBO. You've seen the HBO logo, the circle with the dot in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's astrological sun sign. Yeah, I never really thought about that, but now that you're bringing it to my attention, I do.
Absolutely, it's an astrological symbol of the sun. It's called the monad, and we also find that in some people's favorite store, Target. And Target is a target, but Target is also a solar symbol, an alchemical solar symbol. And what's very important about that is, one, to someone who looks at it and doesn't think anything more and doesn't know that it's an alchemical symbol, will just think that it's a target. And they're right, just like the number 6 is the number 6, but it's also the number 9 if you look at it from a different perspective. So that symbol of target is also an alchemical symbol of the sun. It's also the planet, the classical planet Saturn, turned on its side. And Saturn is invariably known throughout text and mythology as the black sun. The black sun was also another symbol that was incorporated into the German Socialist Party, the National Socialist Party, late 20s through the 30s and 40s, and to a degree perhaps it still exists today, but in no way, shape, or form what it was then. And Hitler always gets this horrible negative attention directed towards him as a historical figure. It really wasn't Adolf Hitler who was responsible for these symbols. It was more Heinrich Himmler, who was the head of the SS, and they performed these rituals. I'm not sure what kind of rituals necessarily, at the Wewelsburg Castle, where they had a big black sun imprinted on the ground, and each member of the elite in the higher echelons of the SS represented the 12 solar houses, the 12 zodiac houses. They were the 12 knights of the Round Table, and they were the 12 disciples of Christ. Heinrich Himmler, of course, being the Christ-like figure, and Heinrich Himmler also chose the rune symbol, the Zeichel, which is the SS, the lightning bolt. That's a rune symbol. That wasn't chosen by Hitler, and that wasn't chosen by a mistake. That was chosen by Himmler because he had a very, very deep interest in these types of symbols and what they meant. So if you take the sun symbolism known as the black sun, you can recognize that even though the solar sun is shining and provides us with nurturing qualities and warmth, there's also a very dark side to the sun. And a lot of occultists, philosophers per se, represented the sun. And I don't know if you remember reading this, but if you go to Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, he'll explain that there are various forms of the sun, that there's a physical sun, that there's a spiritual sun, that there's a physical or material sun. There's various forms of the sun that all have a different wavelength. So the sun we see is yellow and orange, but in another wavelength, the sun is blue. I mean, even you see photographs of that from NASA where the sun comes up as green. And that was seen not to necessarily be literal, but to be a symbolic representation, in the same way that we have the physical sun and we have the black sun. We have each of us as individuals. Some days we have really good days and we're happy, and some days we have really bad days and we're sad. It's a cycle. And from what I understand, one of the greatest keys and one of the greatest secrets at the time, although today the origins have been greatly lost, and any of the secrets that still exist as part of the mysteries, the ancient mysteries, the secret societies, are still kept probably pretty tight. But there are people like Manly Hall, who was not a Mason. He was not an initiate of any society. He was given an honorary degree, and he was able to decipher what those secrets were, and he was later brought into the Masonic Lodge because of that reason, I think, because I think they were actually scared of what he knew more than they did. But my point is, though, when you look at these symbols like the sun and the black sun, you look at human nature. We have good days, we have bad days, we're happy, we're sad. That element of darkness was one of the great secrets that the gods such as Osiris in Egypt, although he was a god of agriculture and he was a god that brought back life to the earth, his name was associated with Orion, the hunter. Herne is another name. And Orion comes from a word Orion, O-U-R-I-E-N, which means sperm. And so he was a regenerative god, a god that led to the impregnation of the earth, and 9 months after the impregnation of the earth, we would have the fall harvest, and we would have crops that would be harvestable, turned into bread and eaten. Therefore, you have the consumption of bread and the drinking of the wine, which was produced through the rays of the sunlight through the vine, and that wine would be drank, those grapes would be crushed and fermented, and you'd have the blood of Christ, if you will, the blood of Jesus and the flesh of Jesus, consecrated and consumed in a ritual that was performed hundreds, if not thousands of years in some way, shape, or form before the Eucharist as we know it today in Catholicism or Christianity. So my point is, though, the gods like Osiris and the gods like Odin, the gods of sunlight and the saviors of mankind throughout various mythologies, one of the great secrets was that Osiris was also a black god, like the Black Madonna, like Isis, his queen, his wife, and his sister. Isis is represented with white veils and with black veils. She is a white goddess and she is a black goddess. And so although we might think of a symbol as being negative, we might think of the swastika as being an evil symbol, and perhaps we need to recognize that people see it that way, but those people also need to be able to recognize, at least in a utopian perfect world, that symbol is something much more powerful and something much more sacred to a lot of other people as opposed to what they believe. When you look at the swastika coming from swasti in the Sanskrit, it's a word that means well-being. It's a very positive thing. It is a symbol of the sun and masculinity to the Hopi Indians. It represents the earth. The reverse of that, as I mentioned, is the savastika, which represents the moon and the feminine principle. So you have the sunlight and the darkness. You have men and women. You have good and evil, not to associate man or woman with good and evil. And in China, you have a symbol known as the manji, which is a swastika painted in a different way, and it represents eternity. And if you turn the swastika counterclockwise, it represents intelligence and strength. If you turn it the other way, it represents love and mercy. And so the National Socialists took this symbol as a symbol of power and strength. They turned it a little bit to distort it, not in a bad way, not with negative intention. And it also came from the Gesellschaft Society, which was drenched in this type of occult lore, like that of Madame Helena Blavatsky. And as you mentioned, and I digress, but as you mentioned, in Hindu temples, it's decorated with these tiny little dots around it, like the bindi, in the center of each arm. And that was a symbol that goes back thousands of years into that culture that has nothing to do with socialism.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we're so quick to, when we see that, it's the first thing that enters our mind isn't a sacred symbol that goes back thousands and thousands of years that stands for the sun and other things of that nature. But Catalina made a good point in the chat room. She says, "Well, let's face it, based on religion and all that stuff, that we're all sun worshipers." Now, I can't tell you hours and hours of arguments with my family members. I have family members that are Christians. I have friends that are more Jewish than they are Christian. And they immediately look to the old ancient symbolism, the old ancient Egyptian, Sumerian, Hindu symbolism, and say that we're being misled by the devil to worship the sun by all of these so-called secret teachings. And I don't even know how to respond to that, because I know at some point a long time ago when the sun first rose, man didn't even know if it was going to rise again. I mean, that's how primitive we were. Yeah, I'm sure maybe back then they might have worshipped the sun, but at some point we've evolved, and especially in the secret societies, that they understood that it was a symbol of God, not that they were worshiping the sun itself. Do you agree with that at all?
I do, and more so the symbolism of the solar deity became this anthropomorphized image of the sun. So that's why you see characters like Jesus, and that doesn't mean Jesus wasn't a real person. His name wouldn't have been Jesus. It would have been Yeshua or Yahshua, and he wouldn't have been white with blonde hair and blue eyes in the Mediterranean 2,000 years ago, I don't think. But you see that with Horus and a number of other gods where they have the solar disk behind their head. Otherwise, as we see it as a symbol today, the halo of the angels. It's a symbol of the sun. It's an anthropomorphized image of the sun, and that's through those images the sun was venerated and worshipped to, as you suggested very, very brilliantly, when the sun rises and people don't know if it's going to rise again, you create this elaborate mythology, this story that the sun is doing battle with darkness, and each morning the sun wins and the sun conquers darkness, who is also personified in its own way. And at nighttime, the darkness conquers the sun. And so you have certain rituals or prayers, etc., that you may perform in order to bring, or hopefully bring, the sun back to its prominent position in the sky.
Yeah. I find it very interesting that it always drags me into a religious argument that I try so hard not to get into religious and political arguments. But do you think there will ever be a day that when society will get to a point to where we all understand the nature of the subconscious and symbols, and we all understand the nature of magic, in a way that we don't have to call it magic anymore?
I don't know, but I can say from the thoughts that come to my head immediately, I don't think that would necessarily be a beneficial thing, because I think having different viewpoints and different perspectives is what gives so much power and so much influence and so much direction through these types of studies, be them the secret teachings, magic, philosophy, and symbols. You can read, various books, Manly P. Hall, Alan Watts, and a number of others that are even much older, and they all give you a different perspective on the same types of stories. And although they might not be what we have been taught in school or taught in the home or taught in our society or culture or through our modern traditions, they all make sense in the same way. Again, going back to numbers, which are symbols, the number 6 equals 6, and the number 6 also, turn it upside down, viewed a different way, it equals 9. So if we were all to agree, and I don't think this is what you were alluding to anyway, but if we were all to agree that the number 6 was just the number 6, and if I turned the number upside down, it was still the number 6, just upside down, we would lose a lot of perspective and understanding on the very essence of what these things mean.
Yeah, in basic gematria, too, if you add those up together, it's 18, and then 8 plus 1 is 9. That number happens to pop up in the Bible quite a lot if you use gematria. With 144, 666, or 153, that number 9 it's there a lot. And if you look at the number 9 on the tree of life, it actually, and just depending, I guess, I look at the Hermetic Kabbalistic tree of life, but it represents the lunar sphere. It represents the Esod, or the foundation, but I don't know if they put that in there on purpose, or I don't know if maybe I'm interpreting that wrong,
Right. Well, that's the thing about when you have a look at things such as Kabbalah, or you have a look at ancient Indian texts, again, with any symbol, what it means to us today, like the swastika, is different than what it meant to generations and civilizations and cultures past. It's no different than what you're alluding to, the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Sephirotic tree. Those symbols meant something to, and I personally believe those symbols meant something to the people that disseminated that information in mystery schools and secret societies at the time, which were kept very, very secret. And there were threats of death, because if you were to reveal these things, if you were to reveal what you knew, what you were initiated in, this would be a threat to the whole order. And I think part of that reason was because there was teaching of self-development and the empowerment of self, and things like Jesus supposedly taught women are equal to men, and that the basic principles of peace. And that, of course, is a threat to the oligarchical power structure at that time, which was Rome, and it's really no different today. Which is why I think these types of subjects are lambasted by people that know and don't know, are ignorant and aware, because even people that seem to be aware, a lot of them tend not to want to take responsibility and be self-empowered. So they equally dismiss the empowering nature of realizing this information and what it can do. And I don't mean that in a self-help book way. That's not what this is about. What I mean is, you go into a grocery store. Have you guys seen? You walk in, they've got maybe flowers at the entrance, or they've got a fresh bakery there.
Yeah, Kroger does for sure. Yeah, as soon as you walk in the door.
Yeah, Publix Publix, where I'm from in Florida, has the same thing. Albertsons here, where I live now in Boise, Idaho, has the same thing. Pretty much every store, Whole Foods as well. They do that because the flowers, and this is well known in scientific research. It's not a conspiracy, as I've been told. It's just a fact. You walk in, and when you see those fresh flowers, subconsciously, as well as the fresh baked bread, subconsciously, you are, I think it's estimated between 5 to 15 minutes, you are programmed, and it is insinuated that you will see, that you will interpret, that you will perceive items in the store as being more fresh and maybe even more wholesome than they actually are. So when you go to the meat section and they've sprayed the dead meat with nitrates and they've covered up the rotting part of the flesh with the nice red meat on top,
right? Yeah,
you might not even see that because you're thinking of the fresh cut flowers or the fresh baked bread. And being aware of that, I walk into a store, and even though it might affect me on a subconscious level, I'm not going over and getting that meat. I'm not going over and buying those products. I know what I want. I go get it, and I walk out.
Yeah, I had that same kind of effect when I went to Las Vegas for the first time.
Oh yes.
Good grief! I mean, and I knew that I was being hypnotized by the colors and the architecture, and I just, be honest with you, I submitted to it. I didn't even gamble. I just drove around and looked at the city for 2 days. It was amazing.
Well, I actually did that too. When I moved to Boise, I drove all the way from Florida across the country, and I stopped in Vegas. I'd always wanted to go there. I don't gamble. I don't drink. I don't do any of those things. I never have. But I was sort of enamored by those, by the lights and by the buildings and by the people and by the symbolism of it in more ways than one. And you're absolutely right. You're just sort of in a trance, and that's what those places are meant to do anyway. They're meant to overwhelm your senses. And especially the sense of reason, so you illogically sit and throw away your money or spend it on things that you normally wouldn't spend it on.
Yeah. Catalina talks about the Luxor. I actually stayed there a lot, and I wanted to ask you about this. When I get around Egyptian symbolism, right, and when I get in the presence of it, there's a very familiar feeling to my inner being that I can't quite explain. And even John Anthony West talks about this. When people go on the trips with him, there'll be sections where people will just stop and they'll have, extreme deja vu. I wonder why that happens. Does that ever happen to you?
I don't know if I'd say it happens to me because I've never maybe really been presented with those types of things. But then again, maybe I have. I actually have a statue of Anubis weighing the heart against the feather in the underworld. I have a statue of Isis holding the staff of power and the Ankh, which is a symbol of life. Those symbols spoke to me, but equally so, I have a Persian statue of the god Mithra slaying the bull, and I have a statue of a little Moai head from Easter Island. So I have various statues and tons of symbols hanging all over my radio studio. You can actually see it on my website at thesecretteachings.info. Egypt has always stood out to me, but I don't necessarily know if it's in the way that you're referring to. But I will say that there are other symbols that stand out to me in the same way. For me, it's the pentagram. The pentagram stands out to me in the way that you're referring to the Egyptian iconography.
Yeah, I've actually got one of those hanging around my neck right now. I don't go anywhere without it.
See, if that was a swastika, you'd be a Nazi, and since it's a pentagram, apparently you're some witch, I'm sure. You're
right.
Satan.
Now, I wanted to ask you this, too. When someone comes up to you, and because I know in this field you've run into this quite a bit, okay? Freemasons. Oh, these guys, you listen to these other radio shows, Freemason. Well, this guy's a Freemason, so he's evil and trying to take over the world. Or this guy's a Rosicrucian, so he was definitely evil and trying. Or this guy's into the occult, so he was definitely evil and trying to take over the world. And it's like a tape that just keeps running over and over again. And no matter how many times I hit it with a hammer, the tape's still in the radio player. Does that ever happen to you?
Absolutely. And I'd say for a few months I was in that category where I needed to be hit with a hammer. I would say the same things, and a lot of that was almost a form of rhetoric because I didn't really think about why I believed those things or thought those things. I just heard other people say them. I watched documentaries. But when I developed my own sense of being and I became more consciously aware of what these things mean, I can give you a quick rundown of those Masonic symbols, and I can also suggest from my point of view that you can be a Mason without being a Mason, and you can be a Mason without being a Mason. Right. You can be in the Masonic order and not actually be a Mason, and you can be like myself. I'm a Mason, and from what I understand from your work, you seem like you're a Mason too. That doesn't mean you're part of some world order or you're a part of a lodge.
Well, even if I was, I'd be afraid to talk about it, especially being a Radiohead, you know?
Right, yeah, then there'd be some, and believe me, people have made these. People have made documentaries. There were some people that made a documentary, including me and some of the other people I had worked with, stating all sorts of things about me for those types of reasons. In the same way that you have that pentagram around your neck, how many would look at that and suggest that you're a Satanist because you have that symbol? Do Satanists wear that symbol? Absolutely. But I think the Satanists that wear it probably are less aware of the meaning than someone like you that wears it. If you let's look at the pyramid very quickly. You've obviously heard of the all-seeing eye and the unfinished pyramid, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much a staple of what we do.
The missing capstone, yeah.
Exactly. And that pyramid, the unfinished pyramid, represents, amongst other things, there's a couple of ways to look at this, and I will try to keep this brief because this could turn into a 5-hour explanation. The pyramid itself, finished, the triangle, is representative of the base of humanity reaching up to God at the apex of the pyramid. That's also the Tower of Babel, per se. The upside-down pyramid is God reaching to man. And where those two pyramids touch, where the ascending and descending pyramids touch, I've kind of likened it to Michelangelo's painting of the creation of Adam, where God touches the finger of Adam. But on a deeper level, the ascending, the pyramid that faces upward, that Tower of Babel, also represents phallic energy, or the sun, the male energy. It's also, to this day, used in the military as a patch for privates. You have the pyramid that faces downward that touches the ascending pyramid, and what is that? That's the chalice that holds the blood of Christ, as some might suggest, but that holds the water. That's the female creative principle. Now, that also creates the two pyramids. If you draw them as triangles, that creates what? It's like an hourglass, but it's also an X, and that X symbol is very, very important. If you superimpose those triangles over each other, you get the Star of David or the Star of Saturn, and that is the micro-macrocosm. The Seal of Solomon is the micro-macrocosm, those two triangles, with a serpent around the outside eating its tail. And that symbol is, and I actually have a picture of it on my wall in my radio studio, that picture with God looking down upon himself on the reflecting pool or the water is a symbol of what we mentioned earlier, a symbol of the white God and the black God. That symbol is one of the most sacred symbols, at least in Kabbalistic study. So if you look at the pyramid and extract it, and the triangle, and extract it from even the Kabbalah, and we just go back to Masonry, Masons represent the pyramid as the unfinished society. Each brick in that society is a Mason, somebody who works to better the community, works in brotherhood, let's say. And each person that works in brotherhood is another brick in the construction of this unfinished society. Now, on a micro level, each individual, yourself, Rusty, me, everybody listening, we're our own little pyramids. We're our own little temples. And when we refine our actions, refine our thoughts, and refine our emotions, when we conquer the great evils of ignorance, superstition, and fear, as is in classical, or I call it classical to me, but occult philosophy. This is the slaying of the beastile nature, the slaying of the great dragon, and this is the completion of the utopian state of Platonopolis, the construction and the finalizing of that pyramid. Every single refinement is another brick in the construction of the micro pyramid, as is every person who works to betterment of others. Every individual Mason is a brick in the structure of the whole society. And the all-seeing eye, the eye of providence, the eye of Ra, the eye of Horus, represents the omnipotence of God, which has been unfortunately exploited to to manipulate people and to program them, I think, through religious institutions. That symbol is not a bad symbol. It's a powerful symbol that represents, essentially, if you're in private and you are making a decision to do something that's moral or not, it's basically the notion that, yes, God watches over everything you do, and even if you're in private and you shouldn't do something based on this philosophy, then you shouldn't do something. You shouldn't do in private what you wouldn't do in public. That of course isn't literal. It doesn't mean that there are certain things you do in public or private. It just means that you're being watched over by that same virtuous eye, if you will. And so that symbol is very, very powerful, and unfortunately it has been vulgarized and profaned by that musket mentality to either suggest that the pyramid has no relevance at all, or that it solely represents the Illuminati. I mean, there are so many different things. The pyramid is such an incredible symbol. The triangle, if you put the triangle inside of a square, the square with the four sides is the four corners of the earth, the four seasons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you have a triangle inside of that. You have four corners plus the 3. That gives you the number 7. And the number 7 is a very, very divine number. Just like the triangle has 3 points, that's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That is Isis, Osiris, and Horus. That's the Trinity that's existent throughout every single mythology and culture. And the story just goes on and on and on. I'm not sure how far you want to go into it.
Oh, yeah, because it'll start glazing people over, but if you're interested in symbolism, look into that, because it's what I think I'm trying to say, and I think what Ryan's trying to say is that once you really learn what these symbols mean, you can actually use them in your own life to help you wake up. It's what they call high magic, or theurgy. It kind of helps you wake up to your higher self, or help you in life, and that's essentially what magic is. It's all about opening. I mean, the Golden Dawn system of magic was never designed to do a ritual and make someone fall in love with you or get a car. It was designed for you to merge with what's called your holy guardian angel, or your higher self, so you can become your true self, and that's what all of them are trying to do in their lifetime. Do some of these magicians stray and do crazy things? Well, of course they do. Crowley did. He did a lot of things, or said a lot of things that people would be like, wow, that's what, they just turn their head. But the messages he put out, it's like, if you look at prophets as a whole, most of them were assholes, to be honest with you. They were all that way, but their messages were divine. It's so weird. I mean, even the biblical prophets were that way. But I'm glad to be able to talk to somebody, even though it may not be as entertaining as say Planet X coming to crash us and kill everybody.
I was just thinking about that. Yes,
but it is the true. It's true in nature, and I didn't really. I am though curious, oddly enough, as to what you thought about that whole thing about the new bodies in our solar system. Have you checked that out?
I have, and again, the middle path is the path that I take, because I saw NASA try to quote unquote debunk Planet X, and they said the proof comes from the fact that they have no evidence that there are any wayward planets in or outside of our solar system. And that's not true, because I have a photographic memory, and I remember back in 2000, I think it was 11, NASA had a huge story. It was on space.com and some other big publications, that there were indeed wayward planets that orbited seemingly without any parent star. And I found that since then. I've got that in my article archive. So NASA obviously either has amnesia about their own reports and their own investigations, or they're just openly lying. One way or another, it's complete negligence to the truth. But that doesn't mean that I think that the world was or is going to end, because that is also an extremist point of view, from the standpoint that if an asteroid strikes the planet tomorrow the size of Texas, and the planet is sterilized for the most part, the planet is still here, the world is still here, the world as we know it is not here, and human beings are not here. It's kind of like what George Carlin said, the planet is fine, the planet's not going anywhere, we are.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
that plays into the subconscious fear of death for a lot of us, and that's why it's so easy to sell those types of sensationalisms.
Yeah, I don't know if you're a big fan of a Tool or not, but they sing that "Learn to Swim" song. You know, that's pretty funny. Where he's telling everybody, you know, Mother Earth will take care of herself. You know, shake us off like a bunch of bad fleas if we get too out of hand. You know.
Yeah. Well, I've actually been playing Tool on the show recently.
Yeah.
I had a listener suggest it to me.
Yeah, and you know that guy, I would love to have him on the show, man, because in his music and his songs, he puts a lot of stories with occult symbolism. You know, even when he was singing in The Perfect Circle, that song, The Three Libras, I'm pretty sure I know what that song's about, but I would love to ask him to see if I'm right about it, you know.
Yeah, you can find that type of maybe I call it an enlightened state in music that has nothing to do with the likes of Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and Taylor Swift that we were talking about in the first segment. There are others like Florence and the Machine. She has a song called The Dog Days of Summer, and that is directly pulled from Egyptian mythology. The dog days are coming, the four horses. You better leave your material items behind because you can't take them with you if you want to survive. That's not just somebody writing a song because it sounds good. And I thought that for years, and then I found out that woman actually studied to be a witch. So she obviously came into this information in the same way that you're telling me J.K. Rowling just stayed at a Holiday Inn, took a shower, and got a great idea to write Harry Potter. No, that woman is schooled in some serious occult information to a level that for me it's even hard to decipher every little detail. Every time I watch that movie, it's just something else I pull out of it.
I always thought that like George Lucas knew a little bit of it too, because I mean, come on, man. Enlightened beings that could use the Force, the dark and the light side. They understood it to where they could use it to do certain things, and they fought with light sabers, you know, and Luke's whole journey is to understand the dark side of himself, and he gets his hand cut off. It's almost like a perfect yin-yang moment there. And then you're the father, but there's still good in you. But you're my son, but there's a little darkness in your hand. You know what I'm saying? It's like George Lucas knew all this stuff too.
He absolutely did. There are those types of archaic myths, and they all really go back to a large degree to Persian mythology and Persian religions like Mithraism and Zoroastrianism, the concept of good and evil, darkness and light, which is as old as the days when you suggested earlier mankind woke up and realized that maybe the sun won't rise tomorrow. They won't feel the warmth of the sun. And so they developed practices, superstitious or otherwise, to try to bring the sun back. I wanted to mention here in the final bit of the show, to sort of sum this up as briefly as I can. You have the pentagram necklace, as you said, on right now, and I said that that's a lovely symbol. I love that symbol. It's one of my favorite symbols. That symbol is very similar to the Ankh, or the Crux Ansata, which means life bestowing, and that's the Ankh that's you see in the Egyptian symbolism. And those two symbols, I think, are the epitome, what they mean to everything that we're saying this evening. Because when you look at a pentagram is basically a man. You could even compare it to the Vitruvian Man of Da Vinci, a man with, and I say man or woman, man with two arms out, two legs out, and a head above the arms and the legs. Well, remember, the square is the symbol of, or the cube is the symbol of the material world, the physical material sphere. In the Devil Tarot card, man and woman are actually chained and bound
to
the back, right? So we're bound, and in Gnostic belief, the soul is, depending on what sect of Gnostic belief, the soul is either imprisoned or just simply lost in material. And that's my whole point. The goal of these mysteries and the secret teachings and the secret societies is the liberation through alchemy, the transformation of the lower self, of the base element, into gold, into a spiritually informed, enlightened being. And so that fifth point of the star coming out of the 4 points is the same symbolism of Osiris in Egypt, who is bound in linen as a mummy, but his head protrudes. And you could look at that and say, well, they just didn't finish wrapping him up. Well, no, that symbol means the body, the soul, bound, and especially the heart, bound in materiality, sunken into the illusion of matter, and then the head, intelligence, protrudes from the top. The 4 points of the pentagram, and the 5th protrudes from the top. That is exactly like the Ankh. And in fact, the Ankh, which is a cross with a circle on top, a capital cross, a Tau cross, T-A-U, with a circle on top, that circle is essentially the human head. And the 2 arms of the cross are basically the arms of the solar savior, Christ, the Jesus figure, crucified. And the 1 singular bar at the bottom are his feet nailed to the cross. And the head comes above the crucified Savior, which is a microcosm, or I guess you could see it as a macrocosm, of humanity as a whole. All humanity is crucified to the cross of materiality by the nails of illusion, that we are sunken into a material world. And this is actually part of the symbolism of the rituals of Masonry, being placed into a coffin and being risen from the grave. Here is the story of Lazarus being dead and then resurrected by Jesus, actually using the same words in the Bible that were used in the Egyptian mysteries in Egypt for Pythagoras, for example, where you would stay in the pyramid, which is a symbol of the womb or the coffin or the tomb or the grotto, the womb of the earth, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's in the Rosicrucian mystery too, and the vault of Adepti. Yeah,
absolutely is. Yes. And what would they do? The priest would come in with the strong grip of the lion paw and say, Joseph, come forth. Rusty, come forth. Ryan, come forth. In the same way that Jesus said, Lazarus, come forth, and raise them from the dead. These were just like the story of Jesus turning water into wine, an inferior substance into a superior substance, transmutation. These stories are meant to transform the self. And I have one last very quick story, and then maybe you can ask me some questions. And I think this really ties everything together. A lot of us have seen Harry Potter. I'm not a huge fan, but I've watched it a lot because of the symbolism. And there's a great scene that sums up everything we've discussed when Hermione and Ron and Harry are trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, and they go into the room with the 3-headed dog, Fluffy. Well, that wasn't just some creative thing, of course, that J.K. Rowling decided she wanted to include in the movie. That's, of course, from Greek mythology, Cerberus. And those 3 heads are, depending on how you look at it, those 3 heads are uncontrolled thought, emotion, and action. And by conquering those 3 heads, or by conquering the 3 heads of superstition, ignorance, and fear, and they do so by what? By playing the music. Like in Greek myth, they play the music and the dog falls asleep. By using the Pythagorean theories of harmony and music, we are able to bring balance back to an imbalanced world, to order to chaos. And so they go through the trap door and they end up in the devil. The devil's snare. And the key point of this is that when Ron and Harry are trapped in the devil's snare, Hermione is out. She was freed from it. And what did she do to unleash, or what kind of spell did she unleash on the devil's snare? She used a spell of light, because the devil's snare would bind Harry and Ron. The stronger and the more actively they tried to escape it, which is a metaphor for life. The harder you try to escape the ebb and flow of the energy of life, the stronger it binds you. And when she used that light spell, it freed them. Illumination and conscious realization of the symbols we've been talking about, the secret societies, of the secret teachings, frees you. And what do you achieve, and what do you find after you are freed from that bound state? A realization that life implies death, death implies life, and of course that means when we are born we are dying, and when we die, in a sense, we are living. And then Harry finds the Philosopher's Stone, the elixir of life that grants absolute immortality of the alchemists.
That's so cool, man. I never even thought about that, and the Harry Potter, but it's everywhere, isn't it? I mean, it really, that story is of dying and rising again, and the resurrection story, the coming back story, the circle of life. It's in everything. It goes so far back to every religion, everything we've ever done. And somewhere along the line, we I think we understood that, back then, in the Egyptian times, in the time of the Mithras, we understood that. And somehow organized religion got their claws into it. And I think they have made society miss the whole picture. I mean, even the pagans really don't call themselves pagans. They call it the old religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of sad to me, but yeah, we only got a few minutes left here. I do want to say this, that next week we're going to be talking about astral travel quite a bit. I don't know if you've ever had any. Have you ever had any out of body experiences, Ryan?
I wouldn't really call them out of body. I've had some sleep paralysis and some other strange things, but nothing like that.
So Ryan earlier was talking about the symbolism of, you could call it the six-pointed star or the Jewish star, but then he explained it, the sign of water and fire coming together. And you guys have heard me talk about the Golden Dawn, and you've heard me talk about those symbols quite a bit. So I'll just give you a little bit of something to think about. In the Golden Dawn, if you pick up the book by Israel Regardie, you'll see the sun rising as it's rising over the water. It also represents that sign as well. That moment, twilight, between day, the sun, and night, the moon. You also see those symbols in Freemasonry, the sun and the moon. That moment between sleep and awake. If you guys can learn how to control that moment, that twilight moment, you're working with your lunar body. But the goal here is to become solar. And that's the Christ story. That is alchemy. And it may take one life and it may take many. But try to understand what we're talking about here before you point your finger and say that it's a devil or it's the Illuminati or it's Katy Perry trying to destroy the world or something. Dig into the symbol, especially the symbolism of twilight, light and day. Right? Sun and the moon. Learn this stuff. Symbols mean so many things, and when you get down to understanding them, you start to wake up. And then you can always ask yourself, like Lawnmower Duquette told me, do I have the same consciousness and awareness? Would I trade the consciousness and awareness that I have now for what I had a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? If the answer is no, then you're moving in the right direction. That's how I feel. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Ryan.
I agree with you. I would like to relate one thing about that twilight moment. I have a picture of, it's an alchemical engraving from a book published in 1677, and it shows these two people collecting the dew of the morning with the rays of sunlight. And that precipitation of the morning dew is a symbol of the emanation of the cosmic mind into the realm of material. It was said that dew, the morning dew, brings new life, a symbol of spiritual forces that work on the conscience during the night. And so the two people that collect the dew are reaping the benefits of spiritual exercises, which is the point of alchemical transformation or transmutation.
Yeah, it's so cool because I read scientific books like Monroe's book, and he had all these questions as he was doing astral travel. Why am I running into beings and spirits who are trapped and all this other stuff? I wish there was a program or symbolism that I could use to figure this out. But then you actually study occult symbolism, and you wish you could go back and tell Robert Monroe that there actually is symbolism. And some of these beings, they became aware in their sleep. They become aware in their dreams. When you start to become lucid, you are dealing with your lunar body, and you're still trapped. You're still trapped in that body. You have to become solar, the solar ascension, the Osiris story. That's where we're trying to get to. Like he was talking about the lion's paw. Well, the lion represents the sun. It's all there. It's not evil. It's been there for you to interpret, for you to ask questions, for you to wake up. Like that little seed in the garden that gets watered correctly. Or the fish that gets picked and they throw the little ones back. Understand the parables a little bit more that way, I think,
Absolutely. And that symbol of the the fish symbolism is Pisces in the astrological signs, and the seed is, I think, another great way to summarize the show tonight. There's something called the Osiris seed. The Osiris seed is believed, especially by the Gnostics, to be in each one of us, and the decisions we make are meant to either water or to starve that seed. And if we water it properly, symbolically or otherwise, it sprouts and we grow alchemically into a different state of consciousness. And I can tell you firsthand, not from something I tried to accomplish, but looking back, the things that I did when I was younger, and I don't mean as a really young kid, but the things I did when I was younger before I came into this type of information and started studying and immersing myself in this, in these symbols and in the secret teachings, there's no way to go back. And I think that was also symbolized in the Matrix movie, where once you unplug somebody, there's not really a way to be plugged back in, or at least you can choose to, but it's very, very difficult. And those types of things are in movies. It's in entertainment, the symbols, it's everywhere. Whether it's good, evil, or neutral, it is all around us, and it does every one of us a great benefit to be aware of the things that can influence us for the better or for the worst.
Right on. And hey, Brian, I want before we end the show, I want everyone to tell everybody, I don't like to tell everybody to leave the network and go listen to the show or whatever, unless I really believe that you absolutely should. And you absolutely should listen to this man's show. How can everybody find you?
You can find me at www.thesecretteachings.info. And on the website, you'll find links to social media, or you can go right to facebook.com/The Secret Teachings. And on my website, you'll find all of my books, as you mentioned. You'll also find my archive, which most of it is subscription-based. That's what supports my entire broadcast. And I'm I've done this for going on 7 years now. My anniversary is coming up on October 10th on radio. And so I don't have a crew. I don't have anybody that works directly with me. I do everything myself. So you can reach me directly and talk to me by emailing me at rdgable@yahoo.com.
Right on. Thanks for coming out, man. It's been an awesome conversation. We have to do it again sometime.
I appreciate it, and I would very much like for you to come on my show sometime, and I'd love to come back on Lighting the Void.
That'd be great, man. That'd be great. And, oh, yeah, Gigi wants to know real quick why they changed the Philosopher's Stone to the Sorcerer's Stone when they brought it to the U.S. That is pretty funny. I didn't even see that. Sorry, Gigi.
That's a great question. It could just be because of simple mistranslation, but the word sorcerer has typically been associated with distortion and poison of the will and black magic, as opposed to the Philosopher's Stone, which is more about enlightenment and white magic. So there's a lot that you could interpret out of that.
All right. Well, that's cool. Thanks for coming out, man. It's been a blast. Can't wait to have you back. Ryan Gable, everybody. Go check him out at thesecretteachings.info. And, yeah, Ryan, thanks again, man. That was really cool.
It was. I had a really great time, Joseph, and Rusty, too. You guys have a good night.
You too. Hang out just for 1 second, and I'm going to take care when I get out of here. All right, so thanks, guys, for coming out. This is a really cool show. Next week, Todd Akamesis, right, and Tom Campbell. We're going to be doing a week of astral travel. Coming up, Spaced Out Radio, I'm actually going to be on with Dave Scott for a full 3 hours, I think. So if you're with us, keep the ride going. We're going to get out of here. Lighting the Void is produced by me, Joe Roop, and cannot be syndicated or rebroadcasted without permission. Music is by Chronox and our one and only Space Boy at spaceboymusic.com. We'll see you guys next week.